The mystery of Mary. Why is she so deeply questioned, even today? Across centuries of Christian history, one figure has been spoken of with deep love by some and deep suspicion by others. She is not an apostle, not a prophet, not a preacher, yet her name alone has stirred debates, divisions, and strong emotions. Mother Mary. What makes this quiet woman from Nazareth so intensely questioned? Why does her presence create discomfort in conversations where other biblical figures are accepted without resistance? The answer is not simple, and it is not merely emotional. From the earliest centuries, Mary was never presented as a powerful speaker or public leader. She appears instead in moments of silence, obedience, and surrender, and yet her role touches something very deep within Christian belief itself. In the gospel narratives, Mary speaks very little, but when she does, her words reveal complete trust in God's will. "Let it be done to me according to your word" is not a speech, it is surrender. For early Christians, Mary was not first a theological problem, she was a lived reality, the woman through whom God entered human history. Her importance was understood naturally, before it was ever debated. As Christianity spread, believers reflected more deeply on who Jesus truly was, and in that reflection, Mary's role became inseparable from the identity of her son. You cannot ask who Jesus is without touching the question of who his mother is. This is where discomfort begins. Mary is questioned not because of herself alone, but because of what her motherhood implies. Her identity points directly to the mystery of Christ himself. To honor Mary deeply is to acknowledge something radical, that God truly entered human flesh, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but fully through a woman. For some, this closeness between Mary and the divine feels uncomfortable. It seems to blur boundaries between heaven and earth. And when boundaries feel threatened, questions turn sharp. Over time, different Christian communities began interpreting Mary differently. Some embraced her as spiritual mother. Others reduced her role to a brief biological function, important but quickly set aside. This difference was not only about Mary, it reflected deeper disagreements about authority, tradition, and how faith itself should be understood. Mary became a symbol, not by her choice, but by history's unfolding. She came to represent everything that could not be easily reduced to text alone: lived faith, tradition, memory, and continuity. To question Marilyn, for many, was a way to question the authority of the church that honored her. Removing her softened the challenge to individual interpretation. Yet even in moments when her role was minimized, Mary never disappeared from the story. She remained present quietly in art, prayer, and the hearts of believers. This persistence itself raises a question. Why does Mary endure across centuries if her role were insignificant? Why does she continue to be remembered, honored, and debated? Perhaps because Mary represents something deeply human that faith cannot escape: trust, humility, and total openness to God. When people struggle with Marilyn, they may actually be struggling with what she reflects back to them, a faith that asks for surrender rather than control. This is why Marilyn is not simply accepted or rejected casually. She touches something personal, something vulnerable, something that demands a response. In questioning Mary, history reveals not only theological tension, but human hesitation to trust mystery, to honor humility, to accept a faith that is received, not engineered. And so the question remains, echoing across centuries, not as an accusation, but as an invitation. Why is Mother Mary questioned, and what does that reveal about our understanding of faith itself? Mother Mary's place in Christianity was never accidental. From the earliest days, believers did not see her as just a background figure, but as a living presence connected deeply to the mystery of Christ himself. Her silence in Scripture made her even more powerful in memory and devotion. While the apostles preached, traveled, and taught openly, Mary remained mostly hidden. Yet this hiddenness created something unique, a space for contemplation rather than instruction, for intimacy rather than authority. The apostles were remembered as teachers of doctrine and founders of communities. Their role was public and visible, shaped by words and actions, recorded clearly in Scripture. Mary, however, was remembered as something different, not primarily for what she taught, but for who she was in relation to Christ. Her role was relational, maternal, and deeply personal. As Christianity spread, devotion grew around figures who embodied strength, courage, and leadership. The apostles naturally fit this pattern, becoming symbols of authority and foundation. Mary challenged a different instinct. She represented humility, obedience, and surrender, qualities that resist easy definition and control. For many believers, honoring Mary felt natural. She was the mother who gave flesh to Christ, the one who said yes when history itself seemed uncertain. But for others, especially as theological systems became more rigid, Mary became uncomfortable. Her importance could not be neatly categorized as authority, office, or teaching. The apostles could be honored as historical witnesses. Mary, however, invited emotional closeness, and emotional closeness often unsettles structured belief systems. Over time, this discomfort transformed into suspicion. Questions began to form, not about the apostles, but about Mary's place in faith and devotion. Why is she honored? Why is she remembered so tenderly? Why does she inspire prayer rather than argument? The apostles were safe. Their authority was clearly defined. Mary's influence, however, moved quietly through love, memory, and reverence. As divisions appeared within Christianity, these questions intensified. What could not be fully explained began to be challenged. Mary became a symbol, not of power, but of surrender, not of control, but of trust. And symbols are often questioned when belief becomes defensive. The apostles spoke boldly. Mary listened. The apostles acted publicly. Mary acted inwardly. This inward strength is harder to accept than outward authority. It asks for humility rather than certainty. As theological debates hardened, Mary's presence softened the faith, and softness is often misunderstood as weakness. Mary holding baby Jesus, while distant voices argue faintly in background, symbolic contrast. The apostles were defended because they represented structure. Mary was questioned because she represented mystery, and yet mystery has always been central to faith. Without it, belief becomes only logic. This tension between structure and mystery continues to shape how Marilyn is viewed, remembered, and questioned. Mary walking slowly through shadow into light, symbolic transition, cinematic pacing. After centuries of debate, one truth quietly remains. The question was never only about Marilyn. It was about how faith is understood, preserved, and passed on from one generation to the next. Some see faith as something rebuilt again and again. Others see it as something received, guarded, lived, and remembered. Mary stands within that memory, not to replace Christ, but to testify that God truly entered human history. To honor her is not to worship her, but to acknowledge the mystery of the incarnation itself. And perhaps that is why her presence continues to unsettle some heart, because she reminds us that faith is not only read, but embodied. In the end, Mary does what she has always done. She points, always not to herself, but to Christ.